What if I told you the reason your prayers aren't working isn't because God isn't listening, and it's because you've been praying wrong? Most people approach prayer like it's a last resort instead of a strategic advantage. They beg, they complain, they focus on what's not working, and then wonder why nothing changes. But Psalm 37 reveals a completely different blueprint. It's not about asking more, it's about aligning better. When you understand this, prayer stops being emotional and starts becoming powerful. You stop chasing results and start attracting them. You stop worrying about others and start walking in your own assignment. And suddenly, things begin to shift, not by accident, but by design. In this message, you're going to discover how to pray in a way that positions you for favor, peace, and undeniable results. Because when you pray the right way, everything changes. Let me tell you something that might challenge the way you've been thinking about prayer your entire life. Most people don't pray from a place of power, they pray from a place of panic. They wait until life breaks down, then they drop to their knees and start begging God to fix what they never aligned with in the first place. But Psalm 37 doesn't teach you how to beg. It teaches you how to align. See, begging assumes distance. Alignment assumes relationship. And when you understand that, everything about your prayer life begins to change. You stop coming to God like a stranger asking for favors, and you start approaching him like a son or daughter who understands how the kingdom works. Because in any kingdom, results don't come from emotion. They come from order. And prayer is how you step into that order. Psalm 37 starts by telling you not to fret because of evildoers. That means don't let what you see disrupt what you know. Because the moment your focus shifts to fear, your alignment shifts away from faith. And whatever you're aligned with is what you empower. So if you're constantly praying out of anxiety, you're reinforcing the very thing you're asking God to remove. Now here's where it gets powerful. The scripture doesn't just tell you what not to do. It gives you a strategy. It says, trust in the Lord and do good. That's alignment. Trust is internal, doing good is external. One without the other is incomplete. You can't say you trust God and then live in contradiction to his principles. And you can't just do good actions without a heart posture of trust and expect supernatural results. Alignment happens when both your belief and your behavior are in agreement. Most people want God to bless misalignment. They want peace without discipline. They want provision without obedience. They want results without responsibility. But God doesn't operate in chaos. He operates in clarity. And when you align with his way of thinking and his way of doing, you don't have to chase blessings. They start showing up because you're in position. Think about it like this. If you plant the right seed in the right soil under the right conditions, the harvest is automatic. You don't have to beg the seed to grow. You don't have to convince the soil to cooperate. The system is already designed to produce. Prayer is how you align yourself with that system. It's not about trying to override God's will. It's about stepping into it. That's why the next part says, dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness. In other words, stay planted. Stop jumping from one idea to another, one strategy to another, one emotional state to another. Stability is a sign of alignment. And when you feed on his faithfulness, you're training your mind to focus on what God has already done instead of worrying about what hasn't happened yet. Because faith grows where gratitude lives. And here's what most people miss. Alignment changes your desires. When you delight yourself in the Lord, your wants begin to match his will. And when your desires and his will are in agreement, you stop asking for things that aren't meant for you and start attracting what's already been prepared for you. That's when prayer becomes powerful, not because you're saying more, but because you're saying what aligns. So instead of waking up every day asking God to fix your life, start asking yourself, where am I out of alignment? Is it in your thinking? Is it in your habits? Is it in your focus? Because the moment you correct alignment, you activate results. Prayer is not the place where you convince God to move. It's the place where you position yourself so he can. When you understand that, you stop praying weak prayers and start walking in quiet confidence. You stop chasing outcomes and start trusting process. And you realize that the power was never in how loud you prayed, how long you prayed, or how emotional you got. It was always in how aligned you are. And when alignment becomes your priority, results become your byproduct. Now let's go a little deeper, because this is where most people lose their power without even realizing it. The scripture says, "Fret not yourself because of evildoers." That sounds simple, but it's actually one of the hardest instructions to follow in a world where comparison is constant and distraction is everywhere. Because if you're honest, it's easy to look around and wonder why people who cut corners seem to get ahead while you're trying to do things the right way. And the moment you start focusing on them, something subtle begins to happen. Your energy shifts, your attention drifts, your alignment gets disrupted. You may still be praying, but now your prayers are mixed with frustration. You may still be working, but now your work is fueled by comparison instead of purpose. And when that happens, you're no longer moving toward your assignment. You're reacting to someone else's. See, distraction is expensive. It costs you time, clarity, and momentum. Every minute you spend watching someone else's life is a minute you're not building your own. And Psalm 37 is trying to protect you from that trap. It's not just telling you to ignore evil, it's telling you to guard your focus. Because whatever you focus on expands in your mind, and whatever expands in your mind eventually influences your actions. If you keep focusing on what's unfair, you'll start operating from a place of resentment. If you keep focusing on what others have, you'll start operating from a place of lack. And neither of those positions can produce the kind of results you're praying for, because you can't walk in purpose while being consumed by comparison. Your assignment requires your full attention. It requires your discipline, your consistency, and your willingness to stay locked in even when it feels like nobody notices. And here's the truth most people don't want to accept. Your breakthrough is not delayed because of what someone else is doing. It's delayed because your focus is divided. When you understand that, you stop asking, why them? And you start asking, what's mine? Because what's meant for you doesn't require you to compete. It requires you to commit. Commit to your growth. Commit to your process. Commit to becoming the person who can handle the thing you're asking God for. And let's be real for a moment. Some people aren't even ahead. They're just louder. Social media will make you feel like you're behind when you're actually building something real. And if you're not careful, you'll abandon your assignment trying to imitate someone else's highlight reel. But imitation is a distraction disguised as inspiration. And every time you chase what looks good instead of what's right for you, you delay your own progress. Psalm 37 is reminding you that God's system doesn't reward shortcuts, it rewards consistency. The people you see rising quickly without foundation will also fall quickly without warning. But when you stay focused on your assignment, when you keep doing what's right, even when it's not popular, you're building something that lasts. That's why it says to trust in the Lord and do good. Not trust in people, not trust in trends, trust in the Lord. Because when your trust is in Him, your direction becomes clear. And when your direction is clear, distractions lose their power. You don't have time to worry about what someone else is doing when you're fully engaged in what you've been called to do. Focus is a decision. It's not something you feel, it's something you choose. You choose to wake up and give your energy to what matters. You choose to ignore what doesn't align with your purpose. You choose to stay disciplined when it would be easier to drift. And every time you make that choice, you move one step closer to the life you've been praying for. Because at the end of the day, your assignment is your responsibility. Nobody else can walk it for you. Nobody else can build it for you. And nobody else can receive what's been prepared for you. But you can miss it if you're too busy watching someone else. So stop looking left and right. Stop measuring your progress against people who aren't on your path. Stop letting distractions steal what focus is supposed to build. Lock in on what God has given you and give it everything you've got. Because the moment you stop focusing on them is the moment you finally start becoming you. Now, here's where a lot of people get it twisted, because they've been taught that trusting God means sitting still and waiting for something to happen. But Psalm 37 doesn't present trust as passive. It presents it as active. It says, trust in the Lord and do good. That means trust is not proven by what you say, it's revealed by what you do. You can say you trust God all day long, but if your actions are driven by fear, hesitation, and doubt, then your behavior is telling the truth your words are trying to hide. Because real trust produces movement. It produces decisions. It produces consistency. and it produces a kind of confidence that doesn't need external validation to keep going. Think about it like this. If you truly believe that God is directing your steps, why would you be afraid to take one? If you really believe that he has already gone ahead of you, why would you hesitate to move forward? See, hesitation is often a sign that you're leaning more on your understanding than his direction. And the longer you stay stuck in hesitation, the more opportunities you watch pass you by. Now, don't misunderstand this. Taking action doesn't mean rushing into everything without wisdom. It means moving with intention. It means doing what you know to do while trusting God with what you don't know, because clarity doesn't always come before movement. Sometimes clarity shows up because you moved. A lot of people are waiting for perfect conditions. They're waiting to feel ready. They're waiting for every detail to line up before they take the first step. But faith doesn't work like that. Faith says, I don't have to see the whole staircase. I just need to take the next step. And when you take that step, something powerful happens. You create momentum. Momentum is what separates people who dream from people who achieve. Because once you start moving, it becomes easier to keep moving. Doors begin to open. Connections begin to form. Ideas begin to flow. Not because everything was perfect from the beginning, but because your movement activated something. Psalm 37 is showing you that trusting God and doing good is a system. Trust gives you the confidence and action gives you the evidence. And when those two come together, results become inevitable. Not instant, but inevitable. Because you're no longer just hoping things will change. You're participating in the process that creates change. Now, here's the part most people don't like. Action requires responsibility. It requires you to get uncomfortable. It requires you to step into spaces where you might fail, where you might be judged, where you might have to grow faster than you planned. And a lot of people avoid action not because they don't have faith, but because they don't want the pressure that comes with it. But you can't pray for expansion and then resist the process that requires it. You can't ask for increase and then avoid the work that produces it. Because every level you're asking God to take you to will demand a higher version of you. And action is how that version gets developed. So instead of asking God to do everything for you, start asking him to guide what you do. Instead of waiting for a miracle to drop into your lap, start moving in the direction of what you've already been shown. Because many times the answer to your prayer is not something God is going to do. It's something he's already told you to do. And when you start operating like that, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling stuck. You stop overthinking every decision. You stop waiting for permission, and you start walking with a level of confidence that doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from trusting the one who does. You realize that you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be faithful with what's in front of you, because faithfulness in small actions leads to bigger opportunities. Consistency in simple steps leads to extraordinary outcomes. And over time, those small, consistent actions compound into results that look supernatural to everyone else. But it's not magic. It's alignment. It's trust expressed through action, repeated daily. And when you finally understand that, you stop asking, when will God move? And you start realizing he already did when he told you to. Now, this is where everything begins to come together, because most people have the order completely reversed. They chase desires first and then try to bring God into the process afterward. They decide what they want, they go after it with everything they have, and when it doesn't work, they start praying harder. But Psalm 37 gives you a completely different sequence. It says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Notice the order. Delight comes first, then desire follows, and that changes everything. Because delight is not just an emotion, it's a focus. It's where your attention lives. It's what you value, what you prioritize, what you center your life around. So when the scripture tells you to delight yourself in the Lord, it's not telling you to just feel something. It's telling you to align your focus with him. And when your focus aligns, your desires begin to shift. See, the problem is not that people have desires. The problem is that many of those desires are disconnected from purpose. They're shaped by comparison, influenced by culture, and driven by ego. That's why people achieve things they thought they wanted, only to realize it didn't fulfill them the way they expected, because a desire that isn't aligned will always lead to frustration, no matter how much you achieve. But when you delight yourself in the Lord, something internal begins to change. Your priorities get refined. Your thinking gets clearer. You start wanting different things, not because you're forcing yourself to, but because your perspective has shifted. What used to excite you doesn't have the same pull anymore. And what used to seem insignificant now carries real value. And this is where people misunderstand the promise. When it says he will give you the desires of your heart, it doesn't just mean he hands you everything you ask for. It means he places the right desires in your heart. Desires that align with your assignment. Desires that lead to fulfillment instead of emptiness. Desires that position you for impact, not just attention. So now, instead of chasing random goals, you start pursuing intentional outcomes. You're no longer driven by what looks good. You're guided by what is right. And when your desires are aligned like that, your decisions become easier. You don't have to overthink every opportunity because you already know what fits and what doesn't. This is what creates clarity. And clarity is powerful because when you're clear, you move faster. You waste less time. You avoid distractions that would have pulled you off course, and you begin to build momentum in the direction that actually matters. Now, here's the part that requires honesty. A lot of people say they want God's will, but they don't want to let go of their own. They want divine results without divine alignment. They want to keep certain habits, certain mindsets, certain distractions, and still expect their desires to produce something meaningful. But it doesn't work like that. Delight requires surrender. It requires you to let go of what doesn't align so you can fully embrace what does. And yes, that can feel uncomfortable at first because you're stepping away from familiar patterns and stepping into something that requires growth. But that discomfort is not punishment, it's transformation. And as you continue to delight yourself in the Lord, you begin to experience a different kind of satisfaction. It's not based on external validation. It's not dependent on how things look or how quickly things happen. It's internal. It's steady. It's the kind of peace that allows you to stay consistent even when results aren't immediate. And over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The things you once prayed for start showing up, not because you chased them, but because you became the person who could receive them. Your alignment attracted them. Your consistency sustained them. And your clarity allowed you to recognize them when they arrived. That's why the order matters so much. Because when you get the order right, everything else starts to fall into place. You stop striving and start flowing. You stop forcing and start attracting. You stop wondering if you're on the right path and start walking in quiet confidence, knowing that your desires are no longer random, they're refined. And when your desires are refined, your life becomes intentional. Every move you make carries purpose. Every decision you make builds momentum. And every result you experience reflects the alignment you've committed to. So instead of asking, how do I get what I want? Start asking, how do I align what I want with who I'm becoming? Because when you delight first, the right desires will always follow. Most people hear the phrase, wait on the Lord, and immediately think it means do nothing. They think it means sit back, fold your hands, and hope something happens, but that's a complete misunderstanding. Waiting on the Lord is not passive, it's active preparation. It's the work you do while trusting the process. It's the way you position yourself so that when the opportunity comes, you're ready to receive it and maximize it. Waiting is not a pause, it's a strategy. It's patience applied with purpose. A lot of people get frustrated during delays because they confuse God's timing with his absence. They see the struggle, the uncertainty, and the lack of immediate results, and they start to question whether anything is really happening. They begin to lose faith and think, maybe this isn't for me, or worse, maybe God forgot me. But the reality is that delays are not denials, they're preparation. They are the time when God is strengthening you, refining your character, and giving you what you need to handle what you prayed for. Think about it like this. If God answered every prayer immediately without preparing you for it, you'd be unready for the responsibility that comes with the answer. You might receive the blessing, but lose it just as quickly because your mind, your habits, and your focus haven't been developed to sustain it. That's why waiting is so crucial. The waiting period is where the foundation is built. It's where patience becomes practice, faith becomes tangible, and trust becomes discipline. You don't just wait to receive, you wait to grow. Patience isn't the absence of action, it's the presence of purpose. While you wait, you're not idle, you're learning. You're developing wisdom. You're practicing consistency. You're cultivating the qualities that will make your breakthrough not only possible, but sustainable. Waiting is where resilience is forged. It's where your vision is sharpened, and it's where your faith is tested in a way that ensures your victory will not be wasted. And let's be honest, waiting is hard. Nobody likes it. The world tells you to act now, to push hard, to take shortcuts, to force results. Society values speed and instant gratification. But spiritual success doesn't operate on the clock of the world. It operates on the timing of God. And His timing is always perfect, even when it feels slow, because slow is not failure. It's intentional. It's strategic. And if you can learn to embrace it, you'll find that delays are often the most powerful moments in your life. During this period, your perspective matters more than ever. Waiting without understanding is torture, but waiting with faith is transformation. It's the time when you start seeing that the steps you're taking today, no matter how small, are actually preparing you for what's coming tomorrow. Every skill you develop, every habit you reinforce, every challenge you overcome is compounding, even if you can't see it yet. That's why you don't waste your energy fretting. You invest it in growth. Another thing people often miss is that patience while waiting is not passive hope. It's disciplined faith. You are actively trusting God to work behind the scenes while you do your part on the front lines. You're planting seeds, cultivating your mind, strengthening your character, and building relationships. You're positioning yourself so that when the timing is right, your opportunity doesn't slip through your hands. Waiting is preparation in disguise. It's faith in action before the visible manifestation. And here's the secret. The longer you wait with integrity, focus, and purpose, the greater the reward. Waiting produces a depth of understanding that shortcuts can never provide. Waiting produces maturity that impulsive action can't build. Waiting produces alignment that rushed decisions can never achieve. That's why Psalm 37 emphasizes waiting so strongly, because what God has for you requires you to be ready, not just present. The truth is, most people fail, not because God's timing is slow, but because their patience is weak. They quit just before the breakthrough arrives. They act prematurely and sabotage their own progress. They give up at the very moment where persistence would have paid off. But those who wait correctly, those who prepare faithfully, are the ones who experience the fullness of what was promised. They are the ones who step into opportunity fully equipped, fully confident, and fully aligned. So waiting isn't doing nothing. Waiting is positioning yourself. Waiting is training for greatness. Waiting is proving that your faith is strong enough to withstand the delay. Waiting is the process through which God refines your desire, strengthens your character, and ensures that when the moment comes, you will not only receive, but excel. Waiting is not wasted time. It's necessary time. And when you finally grasp that, you realize that waiting is not a problem to endure. It's a process to embrace, a strategic pause that guarantees you won't just reach your goals, you'll be ready to walk in them fully. Because the delay you feel is actually development for what you prayed for.